All right, we're live, 103, and I'm really excited about this because we kind of did a different turn with the working actor and started recording our interviews, and now we are back to being live, and I'm so happy to be back live with the acting community globally here on the Working Actor on Casting Workbook. Hey, welcome back, everyone. I'm Natasha Bergiolo, the host of The Working Actor, and I'm thrilled to be live here with one of the most sought-after casting agents, casting directors, and all-around amazing person here in Canada. Her name is Ilona Smyth, and she is the CEO and founder of Smyth Casting, which is based in Ottawa. But let's be real, she definitely is helping every actor here in Canada get gigs throughout the country and abroad. So thanks so much for being here on The Working Actor.
Thank you, Natasha. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here because, you know, you meet so many people in this industry, and whenever your name comes up, they always have such amazing things to say about you.
I love that.
Whether it is because you've helped them get a gig as an actor, as a casting director, or you've taken them on as a coach, or they've taken some of your workshops, everybody praises your work. So I think that you are the ideal person to be here for our first live in season 3 to talk and help just actors get inspired and give them some insight, especially now with what's going on in the industry. So let's take it from how you got started in casting, because I know it wasn't your first passion.
I don't even know what my first passion was. How did it get started? I started by doing background casting specifically and working on sets. And I fell in love with the set environment. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the stories we were getting to shoot and then subsequently see on TV. And I loved it. I loved the whole process. And from there, I just kind of took it upon myself to hit up the producers and say, listen, there's so much talent in this regional market. Let me help you cut some costs in the sense of bringing in so many people from other cities. So we did. And then from there, I went ahead and reached out to some casting directors in LA and said, I'm going to be there for a week. I think it was 21. Said, I'd love to just sit down and pick your brain. And I'm looking for mentorship. And, you know, some great casting directors responded. And I was really lucky to learn from them.
Talk about responding. I'm looking at all the participants that are coming in. You are popular. This is a popular casting director because we've got so many people coming in from Mexico City, Mississauga, Ontario, California, Vancouver, LA, Toronto, Montreal, Los Angeles. They all want to hear from you. So I guess we're going to get to the really great questions. You've helped so many actors in Canada get cast in major features, not only in film, television series, reality shows. I know you were responsible for some for the Bachelorette Canada. And also you've helped them kind of nourish their acting career. So can you tell me a little bit about how that happened for you and how you realized that you had a talent for scoping out talent?
I mean, I grew up a theater kid. I grew up loving musicals and theater and going to watch those. And I just knew there's so much opportunity. And there's people, especially in a regional market specifically, where, you know, I started solely casting in Ottawa, that people didn't really understand how the industry worked. There's this veil over it. And even now, some people, you know, who I help out in Toronto don't actually understand how to get into the industry. So when I do coach or help actors, it's not in the sense of, you know, we're not going to do Meisner. I'm not going to help you figure out who you were in a past life. Like none of that's me. We really approach it from a business side. And I usually start with actors who are starting out in the sense of, how do I approach an agent? How do I get started in the industry? What happens, and just seeing potential in people, whether it's talent, whether it's personality when it comes to reality casting, and just knowing there's something in them, and really just the need for wanting to help, I guess, and getting them to a place that they can succeed. It feels good. There's no better feeling for a casting director when you've seen someone who's been auditioning, finally getting cast. It's the greatest feeling.
Yeah, it is the greatest feeling. And you've got over 15 years experience in this industry. You worked on over 130 projects across North America. I'm just going to list some of yours.
Yeah.
Featured films, including Mel Gibson in The Fat Man, House of the End of the Street with Jennifer Lawrence, February with Emma Roberts, There Are Monsters with Scott Speedman, one of my favorites. And we were talking about the television shows, and also mostly for Hallmark and Lifetime Network. So when it comes to casting, what are you looking for? Because you say you follow follow certain trends and you meet with certain people as well to know what the trends are. So tell me a little bit about that.
So anytime I travel, the first spot I go is a comedy club. I absolutely love hitting up comedy clubs. If you want to hear like what's kind of relevant in the world politically, et cetera, you're going to hear it at a comedy club. I mean, I'm a young millennial. I'm in the sense that I'm on the TikTok. I'm watching who's doing what. I know a lot of these networks do sometimes really want influencers to match either where they're putting their marketing money and or what the theme of the film is. So being on the nose with those things and actually figuring out what provinces or countries these people live in and ways it can help my producer save money at the same time with
Right.
tax credits.
We're getting a lot of people tuning in from Brussels and Sweden. Someone says, no wonder I love you, Ilona, because you love comedy. We are going to get to all of your questions, hopefully all of your questions. If you have any questions for Ilona Smyth, just put them in the Q&A and we'll get to it in a couple of minutes. But first, we want to know a little bit more about Ilona. Tell me a little bit about your workshops and what you offer at Smyth Casting, because aside from being a casting director, you also offer workshops for people, I guess, seasoned actors who maybe need a little bit of brushing up on their talent, and also people who are just starting out. So tell me about what you offer.
So I think to start, in general, art's subjective, right? So you can get sides and get ready for an audition. There's no right or wrong way to go about it. The way that I look at it is, again, I really start with the actors who don't really understand how to get into this industry first and foremost before we ever touch on a seasoned actor. We're going to talk about the business. We're going to talk about who really makes the decisions. Is it the casting director? Is it the director? Is it the network? Where do these decisions come from? We're going to talk about general American accent, why it's important. We're going to talk about questions you should be asking your agent off the bat, simple things to track your own career and understanding that you yourself are your own business, and everyone you're bringing in, whether it's PR, your agents, your coaches, these are all part of your staff and you guys should all have the same common goal, but what kind of business plan are you going to set up to get there, right? So it's understanding the industry from a business perspective and really like, what are red flags of an agency? Are they charging money? Is it, like when people don't understand how the industry works, and especially moms of kids or anyone who just really has been passionate about it. And you see a lot of people through the pandemic who, the world got shook up and then they go, you know what, I've always wanted to do this. And they start into it, but they don't know where to start. That's really what I try to help them with. When it comes to seasons actors, it's kind of like we're taking a temperature check of where you are in your career. There's some actors who haven't even asked their agents where they're submitting them. So there's some actors I've spoken to and they've been like, yeah, I just, don't get a lot of auditions in Montreal. And I go, does your agent submit you there? And they go, I think so. And then they found out that they were never submitted in Montreal for years. So you're not asking the questions. You're just sitting there assuming I'm good, right? But communication is so important and we shouldn't be afraid to communicate with those who we're working with to achieve that same goal, right? So that matters. And then when it comes to seasons actors, we're looking at sides where it's really more audition prep, right? My goal as a coach is to set you up that you're not dependent on me as a coach. Bad business, I understand, but it's in a sense that we're looking for those moments that might stand out a little bit more than the 30 other people auditioning for the same role. What are you going to do that's natural, that the way we can tweak the sides or the intent of the character that are going to make it slightly different, right?
Yeah, and especially since the pandemic with auditions being virtual, you have no feedback ever. You're constantly just, okay, recording, and maybe you've got somebody in a room who's helping you and guiding you and coaching you, but most of us are just on our own, just doing a read and hoping for the best, right? Like, okay, I didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you are looking at people's audition tapes, and I know you probably get this question often asked, but what is it that stands out to you whenever you see an audition tape?
I love this. Good acting. It's always the good acting.
Okay, aside from that.
It's someone who can really bring that character to life, that, we'll see someone and it could be, a secretary position or a police officer or whatever. And it's, yeah, they could do it. They could do it. They could do it. There's not really a bad audition, but then it's like, oh, that's a really interesting choice. And it just added to how the characters screamed off the page when I'm reading it, right? So it's understanding those moments. And I hate it, when you hear like, just do more. What does that even mean? Do more. It's just finding those moments that either come from a breath or switching up the intent of what it might be and really adding levels into the scene and creating some kind of subtext that we might have not seen originally when reading it. And usually your first instinct is going to be everyone else's first instinct. So sit back, think about it, and let's try it 2 or 3 different ways, right? My biggest upset is, I love watching these tapes. I love getting to see more people than I would have in the room because of time constraints, but I miss that personal contact in the room. I miss getting to know the actors and understanding who they are.
Yeah. And do you think that's going to come back? I mean, I know it's made it a lot easier for casting directors to see more opportunity, but do you think that one-on-one will come back?
So I think in some circumstances it might when it comes to chemistry reads or whatnot, but really at the end of the day, like I've read the deadline articles of, people saying casting directors need to get back in. Most of us would absolutely love to. Like that would be great. I'd love to be back in the room and working the room and seeing people again. It really, again, it's a business. It comes down to money at the end of the day. And a lot of these productions are in a situation where they can do slightly shorter preps because they don't need to get a space to run these auditions. I can get on a Zoom callback and the director can still be in Atlanta or in LA or New York or Toronto or wherever. And they don't need to come in earlier. They don't need to be flown in earlier, be put up earlier. And we can do a Zoom callback and they could be on a location scout an hour outside of the city, pull over, hop on their phone for 15 minutes, do the callback, and then move on with their day and not have to wait half of the production day coming in and out. So that is a thing. And then I hear from some actors, I don't want to take the time off work. I love, taking as many takes as I want and really curating the character. It's personal preference. I'd prefer to be in the room, but I don't know where it's going to land. But it really does come down to the business at the end of the day, as much as we'd love it not to.
Yeah. I want to get back to the audition process and when you're looking at tapes and you had mentioned something about, remember to take a breath because as a person, you don't speak perfectly, right? None of us speak perfectly. We all take like breaths, we screw up at times and all that. And I think I had seen you in an interview or something, and you had said that you prefer to see imperfect auditions because nobody is perfect.
Nobody's perfect. And if it comes off so cleanly polished, rehearsed, and that's not really the character or the choice that should be made there, it's boring. It can work, but I want to see the human. Like we're all looking to relate to ourselves, right? When you go watch a great movie and you leave and you kind of feel like you've encapsulated that character, that's what we're trying to give to people, right? That's what we're hoping the actors can bring, which is a huge talent, right? And a lot of that time too, it comes through breath. And that's how I notice it. Like I'm sure, and I've talked to my students about this in the sense that I'm sure you've, as a kid or a teen or whatever, come into the kitchen, you could tell your parents were mad just by the way they're breathing. And you're like, "Dee, dee, 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 dee." I know. But that's human context. It's the way we communicate, right? So whether it's a small beat in between lines that adds that layer to it, it makes it more interesting.
Yeah, definitely. What are some other tips that you can give the actors who are tuning in? There's over 300 of them right now.
Um,
That you can just, I guess, give them some insight on things that really pop out for you whenever you're looking at an audition tape, or things that maybe you teach your students that
I
have
mean,
changed for them.
yeah, constantly be learning, right? There's so many coaches out there. There's so much information. Really follow your gut. Everyone learns differently, right? We learn this in the school system. Some people aren't set up to learn that way. Find someone who you really jive with and have confidence in yourself to make those decisions, right? You don't need to be fully dependent on a coach always or anything like that. Do the training, do the work, do good work, and don't let things get in your head. I've had actors come to me and say, well, so-and-so told me I could never play a doctor. So then
Yeah.
when they get invited into the room as a doctor, in the back of their head, they're going, well, so-and-so told me. Yeah, but I've brought you in the room because I believe you could be, right? So let that confidence seep in and understand you're solving a problem for us at the end of the day. If you come in and you do your best work and you get cast, my job's done. I get to go home and play with my son. We get to, go throw the ball around and have a good time. So really take it into that and then let it go, right? You get 5 to 10 minutes out of your day that you get to play, and that's it.
Yeah, that's great advice. I want to talk to you about sides sometimes. An agent will send you an audition and there's like 20 pages and they're like, it's due by, or whatever. It's this 5 pages and it's due
Yeah.
by Thursday, which is like the next day, for example. What would be the best advice, or what are you looking for in a case? Obviously, you don't want to see that actor go through the 5 pages, or do you?
Well, if I'm giving 5 pages, it's because there's probably more than one scene in there and two very different images of that character that are going to be portrayed in that time,
Right.
right? Maybe it's a killer and they go from being a really great person to a murderous, villain. So I want to see both the scenes I'm sending. We can't send more than 8 pages. We try our best to give at least 48 hours. I believe it's 24 with ACTRA, but um do your best, bring the character to life. And what I find too, memorization wise, what helps if that's a struggle for you, create a timeline of what's happening in the scene and use the keywords you have trouble remembering that help move the sequence of what's going on in that scene along. And then instead of sitting there and when you find you lose your place, you start going, you can just think of the timeline, which is a way shorter thing. So whether the context, whether the words are completely correct, as long as the context is the same, that's great, especially if it's a cold read. But otherwise, please take the time to learn it. And the other thing I tell a lot of actors too, and I've seen this a lot of times because I've worked with a lot of writer directors, especially on the independent features that I've done, is sometimes the audition process is the first time we ever hear those words out loud. So
Oh,
we haven't done a table read. So, and this is pre-pandemic, right? Where people would come to the room and they'd say the line and the director slash writer would look at me and they go, that sounds really weird out of their mouth. I'd go, yeah, it does. And sometimes words look great on written paper, but when they come out, they just feel funny coming out of your mouth. So as long as you're not changing the context, be aware, look at the breakdowns when you get it as much as you look at the sides. Who's the director? Take 10 minutes, look them up on IMDb, go watch a trailer or something they've done to see the style of acting that they like, right? So you understand what you're looking for, if it's a feature film, you can take a little bit more time to do some character work. If it's TV, it's a little faster paced, little tips like that really help.
this is great advice. Great advice. I'm going to get to the questions in the Q&A.
Yeah.
Before I do that, I had also heard that you are a big advocate for actors to meditate.
Yeah, I just think meditation is probably one of the healthiest things we can do for our body. And especially like I'm a nervous person. I'm nervous coming on here. I laid on the floor. I mean, part of my meditation is I listened to Beyonce's Formation and laid on the floor and was like, I can do this. I don't like being in front of the camera. I understand what that vulnerability must feel like, that just taking a moment and sitting there and telling yourself you're going to be okay and breathing through it and getting your breath controlled can make a huge difference before you walk in a room.
Great, great, great. Okay, I am going to get to some questions and say, okay, this is from Lisa Langlois. And she says, when you say do it 2 or 3 different ways, should we be submitting 2 different takes? I only ever submit one because I think that the casting directors don't have time to see 2.
Correct. So I don't usually request more than one way unless it's, a 1 or 2 liner that I feel like you could do more with. Do not submit more than one unless you're making a really strong choice with the other that you're nervous about, right? There's always that safe choice. And then there's one. And sometimes what you feel is strong actually isn't that out of the box, right? And it actually can come off very natural and be a really great choice. Don't be afraid to do that, but make sure you're not doing it for a shock value. And only send 2 if it's really different. If you're sending the same thing, I'm good. Just 1, please.
Yeah. How many auditions do you see, I guess, in a week? How many audition tapes are you looking at?
It depends how many projects I have,
How many
right?
projects are you working on now?
4,
Can you
5, 4.
4 or 5? Can you tell us what you're working on?
Um, yes and no. So one is a feature, but it's not going to shoot till January. And then we have a few MOWs we're working on.
Okay. And so how many are you looking at in a week on average?
I'd say close to 100 a week,
Wow.
but that's over many roles, right? Like
Right.
100 to 300. It depends. It depends. Next week, I'm going to be looking at a lot. I'll be looking at self-tapes for 3 separate movies that I have,
So your mind never shuts off when it comes to casting for anything.
or even when I sleep, Natasha. It's always on.
I'm witness to that because you came to Montreal for an event that I had hosted, and I remember you came up to me and you said, "Who's that guy over there? He should be an actor. He's got a great
Oh, he was, yeah. Second I sat down with Susan, I was like, that man, we need to meet. And we
Yes,
walked over.
I promise you, everyone who's tuning in, she came right up to me. She's like, "Who is that guy over there? Is he an actor?" I'm like, "No, not at all. He doesn't even like no interest in acting at all." And you were like, "That person needs to be acting. I want that person's name and number. We need to meet." And so, how often do you do that? Approach people randomly?
Literally this morning, I was leaving the doctor's office. I was on the phone with my sister. She's walking to work in Manhattan. And I said, I just saw the most handsome man with his daughter, and I nearly stopped traffic and pulled over and said, "Excuse me, sir. Just wondering," especially because I came from that background casting where we're looking for specific faces solely, right?
Mhm.
And I've had people threaten to cut my head off in New York City before because I just stare at people when I'm out, and I'm like, no, but I'm staring in a good way. But in that sense, it's that people have potential they don't even know they have,
Mhm.
right? And opportunities that they don't even know actually exist. So
Is
why
there
not?
a feel good story that you have where you actually did approach somebody and they did become an actor and they, made it work for them?
Totally, yeah. So there's a guy who I knew who would bag my groceries, and when I read a TV show script, the character was exactly that guy I'd spend 5 to 10 minutes talking to once a week. So I went and said, "I'd love for you to just come and open audition." And he did. And it was hilarious because it's just his personality. And he did it again to make sure it wasn't nerves. And he ended up getting cast.
Amazing. I love that. What a great inspiration. That's motivation right there, right? Okay, getting back to the scripts and the lengthy scripts that we were talking about, in case
Yeah.
there is a lengthy script and a short turnaround, does the audition need to be word perfect?
I mean, I really try not to give lengthy scripts because we get in trouble. Like you can't do it anymore under ACTRA. But word perfect is preference. Again, look at your breakdown. Is the director also the writer?
Mhm.
Right? That's their baby. So maybe take a little extra time. No one's watching your tapes, looking at your sides going, that wasn't it. Right? That's not going to happen. So
That would be terrible.
keep the context the same. Try your best, but character first always.
Right. Another question coming in from Mark Gordon. He says, "How much importance do you place on lighting, sound, editing in a tape?"
Listen, I would like a good self tape. We're at the stage of the game. We've been doing this for a minute now, right? You can get on Amazon, you can get yourself some softbox lights, you can get yourself the backdrop and thing. You can get all that for under $200, right? That's, 2 times going to a self tape place prior to COVID. Set yourself up for success. The better the tape looks, the more confident I am to send it off to my client. Um, some people see like it'll be a kitchen scene and they're like opening their fridge or getting out of the car, waking up in their bed or knocking at a front door. I'm going to trust you know how to get out of bed and you know how to do those things. What I'm concerned about is the acting, and that's what I want to see. So the less distractions, like you don't need these guys here. You don't need, you know, um, anything flashy going on. I just want to see you and what you're going to bring to the character.
Okay, great. We have a lot of questions coming in. What are your tips for slating? And what would you suggest we include in our slate? I mean, aside from your name, your height, and where you're from, do you want anything else?
So I'm going to tell you in my notes what I want to hear. So if there's something specific, like right now we need someone who can play basketball, we'll ask for that in the slate. Can you sing? What, are you an alto or whatever? There might be specific questions. Those would be in your notes. Don't overthink the slate, I think is the best advice I can give an actor. Like the amount of questions I get on slates, just tell me who you are. Give me the information. The slate's mainly for me or for my client when we're trying to match heights and stuff. I can look your resume and figure that out real quick.
Right.
I prefer tail slates because I want to get to the work first, and then my client can see the rest of the information. But Some people prefer them at the beginning. It's all preference.
Now, I know that you work very closely with directors and you were saying writers and all that.
Mhm.
How ultimately are you allowed to tell us who makes the ultimate decision when it comes to who will get the role? Is it a collaborative decision or is it solely the casting director's decision?
No, I wish. No, so it's definitely not. It depends on the scenario, right? Like if this is already done for a network, the network's going to be the one making the decision. They're the one putting the money in. They're going to have final say, whether they want final say on everyone from the leads to the one-liners. Some will do that. Some will just say, we just want 1 through 6, right? That's who's going to end up having the final say. Outside of that, if it's like an independent one that's going to hopefully be sold at a later date, it's really the producer, the director, whoever's running it, and it can change, it can interchange. We will show the options. We will give our educated advice on what we've seen and who we feel is going to bring the best to the role. But outside of that, it's not our decision.
All right. Murda has a great question because it inspires me about something else. So, whenever you're casting for a role and you don't live in the city where it's going to be shooting in, A, should you mention it in the slate that you are willing to work in that city? And B, does it kind of like jeopardize your chances because you're not based out of the place where you're shooting?
So I think it comes down to conversations with your agent. And this is again where that communication is huge, is letting them know, like, oh, I have an aunt who lives in Montreal. So, I'm good to go sleep on her couch and stay there. I'm happy to work locally there. Make sure they know where you're willing to work locally and where you're not. And then when it comes, the second part of it is it comes down to tax credits, right? And maybe the producer will be like, listen, I'll forego getting my tax credit because I don't need to pay to put them up because they're willing to work locally, and they'll take that hit, but it's a case by case basis. And I would say you're willing to work locally, so that we're aware, but the breakdown will say where you need to be local too. So you shouldn't be applying if you're not willing to work locally in the first place.
Okay. Let's go and see more of our chat because we've got a lot of questions coming in and I want to get a couple more in there. Let's go and see, when you see a casting call, what are some tips on preventing scams and protecting ourselves? That is from Winnie.
Okay. Preventing scams. I'm assuming they mean when it comes to like agents and workshops and stuff. The internet's your friend, sometimes. So take some time to look up who is running these workshops, what they've done. Check out IMDb. Have they've actually cast things? If they're a casting director running something, are they a legitimate coach? Check Google reviews. Anything that costs like a ridiculous amount of money is a pretty big red flag. If they're promising you something, that's a huge red flag. I can't promise you anything, I can't promise you anything, and I would never coach you on something I'm casting, right? So like those are both pretty big red flags. If it's an agency that's making you pay to sign up, that's making you, pay to do in-house everything, you'll be a Nickelodeon or Disney star. That's probably not going to happen. Pay your mortgage and rent, please.
Yeah.
Save that money. And talk to people. Like the best thing to do is reach out to people who are working in the industry and ask them questions, like legitimate people who are working, because they'll tell you what's up and they might save you a lot of money. And there's people I've coached who have left the industry because they've been like scammed by these agencies and just had such a bad taste and then came back years later. And it makes me sad. So,
Yeah, totally. You often hear about those, traveling, I'm going to make you a star next Nickelodeon star and stuff, and they have a big conferences. So you're saying no, do not attend those at all.
I'm saying do your research, keep your money close to home,
Yeah.
check in with people.
Check in with Ilona here. Corey Hawks asks, I've booked over 5 MOWs over the last 2 years, but it has always been with the same 3 casting directors. What can I do to get the other remaining casting directors to allow me to at least audition?
Right. So again, that's communication with your agent. Which casting directors do they know well? They're the buffer between you and I. Have them contact the ones you're interested in getting to know. Make sure your agent knows who they are, and have them advocate for you. That's where they're making that 15%, right?
Yeah. Okay. And when we see casting calls, oh, we already did that one. Sorry. They're just coming in so fast. I'm sorry about that. What are some, we already asked about the tips on slating. How can someone become an ACTRA apprentice? This is coming in from Kat. Kat, you can give us your last name. How can someone become an ACTRA apprentice without having an agent? Currently finding it challenging to sign with an agency, so quality projects are very difficult to find by myself. Any advice?
Right. So again, casting workbooks exists. You can go and sign up and see breakdowns that go on there. Some will be union, some will be non. The non ones are really going to help you build your resume, which might help you get an agent. Honestly, there's also like in the past, people have gotten it off of commercials. I understand actor in the commercial world are tad at odds right now, but there's that. And then there's, it just happens sometimes, right? Go bag my groceries. No, just there could be any moment like that. And you just need to get cast 3 times on 3 separate actor produced things. So check out, follow the casting directors on their socials as well. Go to the Casting Director Society of Canada or the CSA, follow as many casting directors as you want, because we often share each other's posts when we're looking for something so specific that we can't find. We'll help each other out and check those out, and you can apply, and that might be your chance in, right? So just always be looking.
And for anyone here who is not following Ilona, her name is Smyth Casting, at Smyth Casting. Follow her on Instagram, but don't stalk her. Follow her. And I like that because we were talking before about how you got involved into casting, and it wasn't originally your first plan, but now, I mean, you flew to LA, you met people, and then you made it happen for you. So casting seems to be like an everyday hustle job. It's not a 9 to 5 job, just like an actor's job.
It's a hard work. We're all contractors, just like actors. We don't know when our next job's coming. We're out here hoping. There's no 9 to 5. There's no security in it. We don't have a union either. So like, we're really out here just grinding. And, we have the support of other casting directors sometimes not. So it's hard. It's really hard work. And it goes pretty underappreciated, not to gripe about it, but I still love it dearly. And those that I am lucky enough to work with and have worked with who are casting directors and mentored me also love it. And I think that's the drive. Like, why do any of us do this, honestly?
Well, we're hoping to change that. We're hoping to advocate and get, casting as a category at the Academy Awards eventually. But
That'd be nice.
wouldn't that be great? But we do have the Artios, which obviously awards a lot of casting directors throughout the world and, honors them. And I know that you are a part of the CSA. You're a member, and you were nominated for a Canadian casting director.
The Canadian Screen Award, yeah.
Screen Award. So I mean, that must feel great knowing that your work is getting validated, and you are getting.
And if I'm not nominated, at least a movie or 2 I've worked on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what's that feeling like when you watch a movie that, it's up on screen and you're like, I was responsible for putting this entire cast together? What's that feeling like?
I mean, I don't even know if there's a feeling to it. I just like watching the outcome of having it gone from script to screen, right? I think that's kind of watching all that hard work and the time that everyone's put in come to life. I think that's just kind of cool to be a part of it and, cheerlead on everyone else who's worked on it.
I've got a question in from Brendan Green, who wants to touch on the WGA strike and how you think that's going to affect actors.
I mean, it sucks. Everyone should be paid a fair wage. I saw that the SAG-AFTRA has put a thing out in Deadline today that they've asked for the right to strike when they go to negotiations. It's going to be hard. It's a hard time. There's a lot of crazy things going on in the world. AI is coming up. I mean, they just took over Drake's sound. So like, are any of us safe? I don't know. I think in the whole situation, we just need to stand by each other and advocate for one another to get fair wages and be represented appropriately.
How long do you think the writers' strike is going to go on?
If I had a crystal ball, I would go get my lottery numbers tomorrow. I have no idea.
Yeah. People were hoping that, okay, maybe give it until July. Then people are like September. And we're like, no, it can't possibly be that long. But it just seems like it's going to be hopefully not like another pandemic where, it's just halted. And that would be the worst case scenario.
It really would. For a lot of people, it'd suck. And
All
a lot
right.
of great stories to be told that'll get held off,
All right. What criteria? This is from Sylvain Valadares. What criteria do you use? And it just disappeared. Okay, I can't even get to that. What criteria do you use to access an actor's audition for a specific role? What is your process?
My process, well, I post as I do on the breakdown my breakdowns on Casting Workbook and any of the other sites that I use. And then from there, I make my choices. And from there, we wait for the self tapes, and the self tapes come through and we watch them via those sites. So your agents or yourselves upload them. And then from there, we make our decisions.
Okay. All right. See, now everyone's talking about the writer's strike, where they're saying, yeah, really not a good time to be looking for work when there's a strike. We know, but we're going to keep this.
We're all in it.
In the meantime, we're going to encourage you to follow Ilona Smyth and take maybe some of her workshops and acting courses so we can perfect our talent. Tell me a little bit about the coaching service that you provide. We touched on the workshops that you provide.
So the coaching is really just like audition-based coaching, right? So it's, again, let's look at the sides, let's find ways that maybe we can make them stand out and be slightly different. It's nothing crazy in depth. It's just kind of getting you prepped, and we'll take about 15 to 20 minutes to talk about where you're at in your career, where your goals are, and what kind of ways we could look at it differently to help move things along.
All right, we're going to take a couple more questions before we go. We're going to talk about inclusivity and disabilities now. As a person with a disability, I keep looking for that representation in film and television. Do you find that there is a movement towards diversity in casting now? That's coming from Lori Field.
Absolutely, there is. I mean, I've done so many Oprah Winfrey Network movies in the last 2 years. And I see now from the network level and all the way up, people just pushing for diversity all over the place. So
yeah,
it's about man time.
It is. I am tired that casting directors and producers give actors just 2 days to learn and prepare.
Listen, we're also very tired when deadlines are set on us and we push back, and sometimes things get greenlit really quickly, and then they're like, okay, we've got this amount of time, or a role's added, we need to find someone in 3 days to put on set. So it's pressure all around, and trust, as much as you're taking the time to learn that, we're up watching tapes and then negotiating and not sleeping and dealing with it at the same end. So yeah, it does suck. And that's great for the UK. So, actors limited it to 8 pages, 2 scenes. And we, again, do try to give you as much time. At least I do. It depends on the scenario.
All right. Most of the questions that I'm looking at right now are stuff that we have touched on in the beginning about actors' tips and what you look for in tapes, and maybe when are your next workshops, if you want to talk about that. And then they were asking, should the principal actor show physical interaction with another character who's doing the reading for the audition? That is from Joshua Purenda.
No, I just want to see you.
You, Joshua, no one else.
No one else, just you. I didn't ask for them. I asked for you, Joshua.
Right. Okay. So there you go. So that is our conversation with Ilona Smyth. It's been such a great time having you here on the Working Actor on Casting Workbook. You can follow Smyth Casting Agency. They're based in Ottawa, but she literally is helping actors all over the world, especially here in Canada. So I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. And just thanks for taking the time to be here on The Working Actor. We really appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. So good luck on everything you're working on, and we'll talk soon. Yeah. And to everybody who's tuning into The Working Actor, thanks for being here for our live season 3 episode. We're going to continue to bring more live conversations with some of the best casting directors globally, some actors, and anyone else involved in the film, television, and voice work industry that can help you get that gig and keep you inspired to keep working in this industry. Thanks to Emily Buchanan from Casting Workbook. She's an amazing producer. And everyone in the Casting Workbook family. We'll see you next time on The Working Actor. Till then, have a great weekend, everybody.